She's a human rights activist and a research fellow at the Hoover Institute. She's also the founder of the AHA Foundation, working on behalf of the rights of women and girls around the world. I spoke with her recently about how the cancel culture and the obsession with identity politics may be the cause of much of the racial tension and violence we're seeing here in the U.S. and in other parts of the world. Here's my interview with AYAAN Hirsi Ali. AYAAN, thank you for being here. We're hearing from politicians, from educational institutions, certainly from the media, that the U.S. is a racist country. Last week at the Democratic National Convention, Michelle Obama had this to say.
Here at home, as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered, stating the simple fact that a Black Life Matters is still met with derision from the nation's highest office. They see people calling the police on folks minding their own business just because of the color of their skin.
AYAAN, your reaction, is this an accurate snapshot of the racial situation as you see it in the United States?
I've got to take a deep breath here and say, Michelle Obama has fallen for what we call cynical theory. My three friends actually call this cynical theories. I think America is the best place on planet Earth to be Black, to be female, to be homosexual, to be transgender, to be anything you want to be. Now, do we have problems? Yes, we do. We have inequalities, we have police brutality, but I am one of the people, and I'm Black, of course, who thinks that the police force in the United States is more of a force for good than it is for bad. And I listen to these words and the emotions, and I want to ask people like Michelle Obama, wait a second, your husband was president for 8 years. We have a vice president, a nominee who is Black and female. I don't think that painting America in this terrible, terrible way is a good thing. I'm a citizen of the United States of America only since 2013. And I still think of it as not just the most powerful nation and what people associate with, but I also think of a nation that is a force for good in the world. It's still the best nation, better than China, better than Russia, any Middle Eastern country you can name, any part of the world. So please, let's stop this this crazy identity politics thing that's taking over. Go on.
AYAAN, you're an immigrant to this country, as you just mentioned. Compare your experience of race here in the United States and the way you're treated to what you've seen in your country of origin as well as in other countries.
So my country of origin is Somalia, and we don't use race to divide one another because we're all the same color and of the same race. In fact, we're all the same tribe, but we use clan. And in Africa, there's a lot of tribes. I lived in Kenya, so it's all tribal. And so being a human being, there is no end to the ways you can divide one another up. You can say, you know, your clan is superior to your clan. There are limited resources, and I want things for myself and my group. For your group, it's all zero-sum. Now, what's interesting to me about America is that we've established a nation that developed over many decades and that has really made a serious attempt at bringing all these different individuals and groups and tribes and races together to establish a nation where we can all be citizens. Now, are we perfect? We are not. But can we aspire to the foundational principles of this nation? And I wish during the Democratic Convention, I think that we should have been talking about what it is that makes us different, exceptional, and great as America, and not harp on our what has. Let me tell you something. Americans and the American nation are incredibly frank and honest about the slave trade, about segregation, about the original sins of this country. We're honest about it. We reflect on it. But what we need to do is learn from it. Okay, not give into the ideology. And this is where I think Michelle Obama is wrong and misguided. That we are actually taking on this ideology. We're using the language of what they call themselves critical justice theorists, critical race theorists, but it's an ideology. And the thing to watch out for, the thing to look out for, is not to adopt their language. But there, again, having said all of this, I admire Michelle Obama, Barack Obama for what they've done for their daughters, their family, this country, their service. They're making a huge mistake when it comes to talking about race the way Michelle Obama is doing in the clip that you showed me. I'm very upset by that.
At the Democratic Convention this past week, we heard repeated mentions of systemic racism and the need to root it out. Is there systemic racism in the United States, to your eye, as a Black woman?
I'm not just a Black woman. My identity is way more complex than just my skin color. And as a scholar, what I can tell you is that I know that there is an ideology that started out in our universities. And this is all well written. I really want you to share this with your viewers. It's called Cynical Theories, and it explains what this ideology is all about. But they want us to talk about race. They want us to talk about gender. They want us to talk about all the things that divide us, not the things that unite us. And this ideology has really succeeded into getting into the hearts and minds of our elites. So Michelle Obama is not the only one. Oprah Winfrey is not the only one. Exact. So I think this is my. I just see my role as facilitating for Americans to see this for what it is. It's an ideology. It's a cynical ideology. It's a nihilistic ideology. It only serves to divide us. Let's not feed it anymore, especially on such elevated platforms as, the conventions of political parties.
Is systemic racism a reality? We are now, people are running on the platform of rooting out systemic racism in the United States. Do you see it here?
See, I have a problem with the phrase systemic racism. I understand the racism of the far right. They say it in your face. They hate Black people, right? They think white people are superior, and so on. So that's how we used to define racism. But now, if you adopt phrases like systemic racism, that becomes more fluid. It becomes to me like a racket. Okay, you are a white man, Mr. Arroyo, and just by virtue of being a white man, you're racist. And there's nothing you can do about it. So I want to push back, not just push back, I object to that phrasing of racism, because then if everyone is racist, no one is. The whole thing, it means nothing, right? So phrases like systemic racism, unconscious bias, what is the other thing? The whole toxic masculinity, all this stuff, that is adopting the language of these ideologues. And we need to stop doing that, because the more we do that, our system is not racist, okay? This is the United States of America. We've established institutions and programs and allocated huge amounts of resources to get rid of racism, to get rid of segregation, we fought a war to get rid of slavery, okay? And we haven't stopped there. We've tried to export that to the rest of the world. So if we start saying our system is racist and we have systemic racism, we are adopting the language and the goals of this nihilistic ideology. Raymond, one of the things I like about what you do is you bring a sense of humor into very serious discussions. These ideologues are not only dividing us into race, gender, and other immutable traits. We can't relate, we can't laugh anymore. We don't have a sense of humor anymore. It's awful. And
you're right. It's inhuman. It's inhuman. And I'm glad you brought that out, because I agree with you. I think the things that unite us are far more numerous than the things that divide us. But I think you've hit upon it. This cynical theory, it's not only a hatred of America, of the foundational principles of America, it also is a repudiation and a hatred of your fellow man. That's what it's an intellectual construct that allows you to really hate in a different way. It's very curious, and it's bound up in this identity politics, which I know you are so opposed to.
It's absolutely that. They say that they're for justice, but what they achieve is injustice. They say they're against racism, but what they achieve is segregation and more racism. I cannot, if I follow their ideology, I can't just see you as a fellow human being. Human beings, they have a rich and complex way, many complex ways of relating to one another. But they're telling us the only way that we can relate to one another as human beings is through power. Okay? They only see everything through the prism of power. And if we do that, we are going down a path that I can tell you is not good.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Fiber. I want to fight it with every fiber in my being. And I call upon all of you to do the exact same thing. I'm very forgiving of Michelle Obama and all the other incredibly talented and fantastic people in our nation for adopting this, because Michelle Obama wants to show that she's compassionate, that she relates to people who are oppressed. What are these ideologues doing? They're exploiting that. So they need to get sentences like that to come out of her mouth, because it's the only way that she can show that she's a virtuous person. And it's not just Michelle Obama. It's everyone right now. If you want to be seen as a virtuous person, you have to say, America is a racist country. It's not. Sorry.
Yeah. AYAAN, in a recent Wall Street Journal article entitled "America Doesn't Need a Revolution," you write about the American can-do spirit. And you say this: Americans traditionally solved problems locally, sitting together in town halls and voluntary associations. Some of that spirit still exists, even if we now have to meet on Zoom. But the old question, how can we figure this out, is threatened with replacement by, why can't the government figure this out for us? How worrisome is it that we're so awash in identity politics and so divided that that conversation, the one you advocate, is not possible?
It's still possible. I mean, in small towns, in small communities and medium-sized communities, we still are having conversations. Even on an elite level, we're still having these conversations. But yes, it threatens us because the people who are behind this ideology, critical justice theory, critical race theory, identity politics, cancel culture, whatever they call themselves or whatever we call them, what they want us to do is to say, let's cede everything to government, and then they take over governments and governmental institutions at every level. And so then they dictate to us what is right and wrong, what we can and cannot do, what we may and may not do. And we really need to see this for what it is and understand it. And it doesn't matter if you're a conservative or a liberal, if you are Republican or a Democrat. The only way we can come together is just the way we do it and we've been doing it for the last 200 years, and improve and refine and get things better, but not succumb to this negative and nihilistic way of looking at ourselves and at our fellow human beings.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And that conversation is only permissible if you regard the other person as a human being and not as an object of power or a symbol of oppression or some other construct that's being put in the middle of that relationship. AYAAN HIRSI Ali, I could talk to you all day. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Raymond, and keep making us laugh.
I will try. Thank you, my dear. Great to talk to you.